Once upon a time, I used to do comic book reviews a little more often than I would do. Well, not a little more often. I did comic reviews every once in a blue moon. The last one I did was the Ukrainian comic Perimo. I still don't know what that comic is supposed to be called, I'll be honest with you. But I did want to do comics more often. One of the ones that I tried to do was a Fortnite versus Batman kind of comic. But I found out that the one I had was actually more of a sneak peek rather than an actual full issue. And from there, it kind of just fell through the cracks a little bit. And I never really got a chance to keep going with the comics that I wanted to keep reading. I think my last comic review was almost a year ago now. But I have been keeping up a little more with comics this month. And, I've read, great things like Wonder Woman, Dead Earth. I read All-Star Superman, which is, I'm so glad I read that. And, I've read very many like that. I'm currently working through Flamer as we speak. But, as you do that, you run across multiple things. I've pointed out before, like with my Manhunt review, that once I picked up Manhunt, or when I possibly picked up The Monstrous Mrs. Mai, I noticed that I was getting some really messed up recommendations. And obviously that was attributed to the fact that it was a splatterpunk work, and, this is what splatterpunk is. But, since I've been reading more comics, I actually got recommended this little gem here. Now, I read a lot of my comics on my phone. But first, let's talk about AI art. We all know the plague of AI art that has hit the media, and the many, many, many ethical concerns that it raises with how corporations are attempting to use AI art to phase out real people and their business practices. In addition to AI art, due to the fact that it's not a real person, has to steal from various artists to create its own style, thus meaning that AI art is technically a bunch of stolen artwork put together in a blender and then try to spit out its own unique work. I won't be a hypocrite and say that I hate AI art completely. I am a DM who runs online campaigns. AI art does have its uses in the fact that I can quickly generate or snag a picture that represents a character I introduced without having to spend hours looking for a matching art piece online or having to spend real money to commission something for a character that's going to be in a campaign that's going to run maybe 2 more weeks. In addition, I do sometimes find a bit of humor in seeing what horrors AI art does inflict upon us. For example, once upon a time I was looking for AI art pieces on One Piece, and I just found these. But I will say that I stand firmly against the idea of using AI in legitimate creative professions or aspirations. If you want to write a book, if you want to paint a picture, if you want to make something, you should actually make it. You shouldn't just type in a small sentence in a prompt box and then get the completed work that required minimal effort on your half, and then turn around and sell that for profit. As I said before, AI art can't learn for itself. It doesn't have that human element to it that gives paintings their real meaning. And as such, not only does AI art kind of blow most of the time, you are effectively just stealing other people's work, just put into a blender and sliced together so it can't be recognized. Which is why I just had to pick up and read The Argonauts by Buddy Garrison, a book on Kindle Unlimited that is proudly declared to be made up entirely of art made on the Midjourney AI bot. This was published on January 8th of 2024, so this is a very recent addition to the comic community. And let me tell you, it being made by an AI bot is not the worst thing about this book. Now, obviously from the title, it's a fairly simple guess of what this book is going to be about. It's a retelling of Jason and the Argonauts myth, only more of a prequel than the true tale itself. At least so to start. But the story itself tries to blend Greek mythology with a post-futuristic apocalyptic setting. Or a post-apocalyptic futuristic setting, I should say. I kind of got my words mixed up there. Now, the book itself claims to be a mix of ocean punk and steampunk, but that's a bald-faced lie, honestly. Namely, because you don't fucking... Okay. Namely because you don't see the ocean at all in this book, and it's not steampunk elements, it's just flat out sci-fi elements. So I don't understand why it claims to be ocean punk and steampunk. Now, apart from the story being made by an AI artist and thus dooming for failure from the start, you would think that reading it, well, maybe the author at least had a solid basis for which to write a compelling story. As far as I can recall, Jason and the Argonauts is one of the most famous stories that you actually don't see remade all that often in modern day. The most popular is obviously Hercules, or, as his Greek name actually is, Heracles. But we see adaptations of Perseus often enough, thus Wrath of the Titans, Clash of the Titans. So Buddy Garrison went into this doing absolutely the minimal work for the art, had already laid groundwork of a story to follow, and even had benefits from telling a Greek myth story that hasn't been played out yet. So obviously this should be a recipe for success that while the art is probably terrible, the art is terrible, maybe the story really compensates for that. Maybe the story it's telling is going to be amazing.
Wrong, sir. Wrong. Oh, you get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
Like I said, I wish I could tell you that the AI art is the worst thing about this book. I really do, but man, it's a three-way bare-knuckle fist fight between the story, the art, and the egregious misunderstanding of Greek myth to see what the main terrible thing about this book is. So let's go ahead and dive into this comic and just do a quick review. Do a review on this. Since the book is only about 55 pages long, I'm just going to go through this bit by bit, page by page. We're going to talk about this. Alright, so let's start off by looking at this cover. The cover is okay as far as covers go. It's nothing exciting, and on its own, the AI art isn't terrible. Based on the start, you can easily guess that this is probably some kind of post-apocalyptic world. The woman on the front is actually supposed to be Hera, the Greek goddess. And I really hope you like this specific picture of her, because it's the author that Buddy decides to reuse the most for our goddess. Either he couldn't get another picture to come out looking close enough to pass off as her, which, let me tell you, is not a courtesy he expands to the rest of the characters of this book, or he just got lazy. And let's be real, there's probably a combination of the two, though in what ratios I can't tell you. That'd be me just guessing. I'm going to probably err more on the side of laziness, though, because if you actually look a little closely at the cover, you can tell where the author is clearly just photoshopping in the artwork of Hera, instead of trying to make the two things blend. Because if you look down here, near where his author name is, you realize that he didn't blend the photographs here. So when you look at this, and I don't know if you guys can tell very well, it is mostly told because you can kind of see the off-white. The two whites of this area do not match in the slightest. So, yeah, I think it's kind of funny, but it's just a hint of what's to come, really. So we flip over to the first page. You see, I think what is supposed to be our assembled group of Argonauts. But again, this is where the AI art comes in, and it's just not working well for it. But I have a little more of a rant on that later, so let's just move on. For the most part, you see general information. The Argonauts, written by Buddy Garrison, art created by Midjourney AI, will be book designed and published in Comic Life 3, which I'm not sure what it is. It's inspired by the 1963 film Jason and the Argonauts. Based and inspired by the 3rd century BC Greek poem Argonautica by Apollonius Rhodius. Now let me tell you this, it is definitely far more inspired by the 1963 film than it is actual Greek myth. I'm going to go into this a little more later on as we go further into this, but I just want to keep that in mind right there. Just expect it to be more inspired by the movie. So, here, let's look at this. The myths we heard have changed. They evolved from where we left them as children. The gods were really no gods, but merely a stronger species of man with powers, descendants of fallen angels and demons under a creator they would not acknowledge. I should know. I am one. I am Hera. Technology hit a peak, then receded. as did our influence. In some ways, everything became simpler. In others, more complicated. There would always be heroes and villains, martyrs and messiahs, but there was only one Jason. Jason, the true heir to the Golden City, but it became the dead, nameless city after the dragon attack. The best thing I ever did was save Jason. I then took him to Chiron, the maker of men and heroes, and we waited. So, in the first 4 pages, you realize what the obvious problem that comes with the use of an AI bot for the art. None of the pictures go together at all. And this isn't a problem that fades as the book goes on. Repeatedly, the book feels like the author retrieved a collection of vaguely related images and just slung them together with as sloppily as a story as he could manage. To get away with, that is, I guess. I could easily have made a more coherent story than this in an afternoon while on 3 hours of sleep. Now, you don't really notice it on the first page. It's mostly a bunch of establishing shots, so you can easily excuse how the times of day change and how the cities constantly change, more as it's establishing the world. But then when you get to the second page, that's when things really start to just stand out. None of the panels go together in the slightest. The first panel is clearly some kind of robotic apocalypse prompt where mechanized monsters tear through some kind of rubble. The second panel then cuts to a guy holding a gun. Now, you could argue that this guy does sort of fit in, as he looks like a grimy warfighter with his outfit and gun. He just doesn't fit the dark skies and the ominous tone of the previous scene in the story. He's more like a burly Wolverine stomping into battle with the rest of Captain America's squad.
We're sitting ducks out here! Alex, I need recon! I'm working on it, bub.
And if you look too close, like, what is this gun design? I mean, look at that thing. Is that the barrel on top? And is that a pistol? Is that part of his vest? Just look at that art. There's nothing about this art is awful. But then I think the one that's most aesthetically different from the other 4 is obviously this one, panel 3, the werewolf. I'm just going to call it the werewolf, even though I think it's supposed to be an antagonist later, but it's the most egregious of all the panels. It suddenly switches color scheme to black and white. He stares slack-jawed right at the camera, and on first glance you'd think he might be dripping with blood. But once you zoom in here, you realize that it's more accurate to say he's got a bunch of twigs and grass hanging off him, which doesn't line up with the story that's presented with the rest of us, the aesthetic of the rest of the story. The style is also much more grungy and rough, more like a horror novel, as opposed to the neater style that's in all other 3 panels, the more clearly AI, the plasticky nature of AI art. The background behind this villain makes no sense either. Is that a sun or a moon? Why is it 2 circles instead of just 1? Where did the trees come from? The rest of the comic takes place in a desert wasteland, which is why all these grass, twigs, and trees don't make any sense. They're nowhere to be seen throughout the rest of the book. Overall, it's just bad. And furthermore, the story. Look, one of the first sentences in, and it's already establishing its own plot holes. The myths we've heard have changed. The gods weren't really gods, but a more advanced species of man. Okay, seems simple at first, right? It's going the route of the first 2 Thor movies, where Thor wasn't technically a god, just an advanced, long-lived alien species that highly resembled humans. I can understand if that's the angle it was settling for. Except it then says descendants of fallen angels and demons under a creator they would not acknowledge. So they're not men. They're more like Nephilim from Diablo 3. And there is in fact a god, or at least some form of cosmology there, because they have a creator that they refuse to acknowledge. In any case, the backstory that this comic, I think, is desperately trying to establish is that humanity advanced to the point where it had amazing technological advantages, except some kind of apocalypse happened. Now, what this apocalypse is a little too vague for my liking. The text implies that it's more of a technological collapse, due to the fact that it says it receded. But then panels that were being shown of the dragon and the first panel when it says technology hit a peak and then receded shows more like a robotic apocalypse, like robots rose up and destroyed the humans. Especially, again, with the dragon pictures with the robotic overlords. But honestly, in truth, the only important thing about this backstory that it's trying to establish is the existence of Jason, where Hera saved him from the Golden City destruction through unspecified means, and delivered him to Chiron, who in this world is just a really buff, angry dude and not a centaur. We cut to years later. It's feeding time! Run! The Wolf King has returned! To the hills! Hide the women and children! Stand your ground, men! For the islands! King Laconian, you fools! You think you banished us? You thought we were done? We were just biding our time. Literally, we are everywhere, and we brought friends, not just hungry wolves. Get it? Biting our time? Because he's a wolf? Get it? Actually, the funny thing is, I think this is an author flub rather than an actual attempt at a joke. For future reference, it's biting, spelled like this, with a D, not biting. So, the only reason I think this is a flub on the author's part, rather than an intentional joke, is because King Lyconian makes a point of saying literally, as if that wasn't the joke. And the joke is he genuinely means it. In any case, it turns out this isn't actually an attack on the settlement, but rather a grown-up Jason having a nightmare about the future. He wakes up to find his roid-raging mentor standing over him, and the two try to have a conversation where they sound like real people for a second. Nightmares, Jason? Yeah, they won't stop. Maybe it is my cooking. That doesn't help. They are vivid. Those are called memories, boy! I told you all I know. The dragon attacked the Golden City. Your parents were killed, and you were brought here. Who? Who brought me here? Someone who isn't around anymore. Worthless, really. I've given you all I could, Jason. You've given me everything, Chiron. The warriors of the world seek you, and you are my father. Damn right. So get up. I need you to go to the town and warn the king. It's feeding day. Soldiers and walls need to be up. The wolves are gone. They haven't been seen for a year. They are not gone. A village was destroyed last week. A body I found had the markings of a wolf. There are rumors across the islands that they have an army. Okay, so I know this comic was made with Midjourney AI, but the longer I read this book, the more I begin to suspect that the comic was also written by an AI author as well. Mostly because of scenes like this, where two characters try to converse, but there's no coherency to their conversation. You think this is supposed to be Jason having a premonition about the future, where King Lyconian attacks his home and tries to kill his family. But then Chiron interrupts before callously reminding Jason of everything that the past few pages have already told us for some reason. In fact, first of all, not only is it redundant, but it also makes Chiron look bipolar. He goes from joking around with Jason to almost being annoyed with him in terms of tone. Like the whole boy thing. Those are called memories, Jason. Or those are called memories. But the fact that he adds on the diminutive boy. Now, I bring up God of War, just the God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok a lot. But one of the things that it really established, and this to go further to my point of tone, is that Kratos doesn't know how to bond with his son. And one of the ways he keeps himself emotionally distant from Atreus is he always calls him boy. So when you hear Kratos say boy, he's often annoyed or unsure how to emotionally react to his much more open son. So, and that works because boy is something, it's not really something you call somebody unless you're annoyed with them or unless you're talking down to them. So it doesn't make sense that Chiron goes from maybe my cooking gave you nightmares to those are called memories, boy, like all angrily. But another problem with this is more just the scene itself. If Jason was having a flashback to the Golden City in his dream, why is King Lyconian the focus and not the dragon who destroyed the city? And why does the text box earlier say many years later? And then this is further confused in the next page. The two random AI art characters were told they're supposed to be Jason and Chiron, despite the two looking nothing like the previous versions of themselves. Chiron continues to switch personalities faster than Kevin Wendell Crumb, angrily telling Jason to go tell the king that Lyconian is coming because it's feeding day, notably not time. But then Jason says the wolves haven't been seen in a year, which, quick tangent here, in my opinion is a little too soon to write them off as having vanished, considering it. Okay, so I'll get into this later, but the book is very inconsistent on how often the wolves attack. So the wolves are gone, but wait, Chiron tells us that last week a village was destroyed, and he found a body that was obviously marked by the wolves. But the wolves are so far keep saying they come back at a specific day, feeding day / time. So are they on a schedule, or are they just rampaging monsters? In any case, the story continues on. Chiron forces Jason to go talk to the king. Jason tells him, hey, the king never listens to me, but he does listen to you. And then Chiron's like, maybe this time will be different. Just go ahead in my place. After this time is not different in any way, as the king threatens to execute Jason if he dares stand before him again and blatantly says he'll only speak to Chiron. Jason leaves. And as he's leaving, he runs into Theseus, who says, hey, you know what? You're right. The Wolf King has returned. Also, Chiron trained me to fight hell itself. Bye! I'm actually not joking. That's how the scene goes. Theseus just randomly appears, says, you're right, and then either he or Jason leaves mid-conversation. And I mean literally mid-conversation. We see Theseus saying he came to see Chiron, and then we just slam cut to Jason and say, geez, what is that guy's problem? And can we take a moment here to just really appreciate Theseus' design here? First of all, he looks like an incredibly buff Keanu Reeves, which I'm not complaining about, but it is a very noticeable similarity. And if you know anything about AI art, you know that's probably not accidental, considering that AI art steals most of its art and just kind of, again, recombines it in a blender. You also notice that he's not wearing a shirt, which I find a little funny because then you zoom in right here where the clasp for his cape is. He's not wearing a shirt, so, what's that thing attached to? Is he like just flexing his pec around the claps to hold it in place? I mean, how extra is that? Also, this dude doesn't have nipples. Like he kind of has nipples, but he doesn't have nipples. Those are two circles on his chest, not nipples. But anyways, to continue on, we see a random show of Hera telling Jason to be ready before we quickly cut to a whole new settlement that we're told is supposed to be the one Jason is living in as wolves attack it. Somehow this ends with only Jason standing against the wolves, as Garrison copy-pastes the same exact picture a couple pages earlier. But then Theseus shows up to help. Alright, I guess it's me against all of you. Not so fast, Jason. Theseus? What are you doing here? Your father taught me better, and the king was just eaten alive, so... What does the king have to do? Look, I could be here all day picking apart this story, just let's move on. You're damn right I did. Chiron! And I brought some old battle buddies. Defend the city! We get some random shots of just random pictures put together and told to imagine a fight scene. And the battle continues into the dawn light. Chiron, I don't think we can hold on. If this is how we are going out, it has been a pleasure, son. Tighten your boots. The fuck does that even mean, honestly? Anyways, they fight until Hera decides enough is enough and intervenes. Why she didn't do this earlier is never answered. Remember, the gods aren't gods in this world, just a version of man with extra technology. But they're also the children of angels and demons. So it's not like they're bound by any cosmological standard that they can't directly interfere as with normal Greek myths. That's why they so often work through demigods. Or say like in the story Percy Jackson and the Olympians. We're told the gods can't directly interfere unless it's another godly, matter. And so that's why they often work through mortal champions through their kids. But no, none of that is established here. In fact, she just shows up and helps. So why can't they directly interfere? I don't know. And I don't care, so let's move on. Anyways, Hera nukes the city they're all in to kill the wolves, which somehow doesn't kill everyone else in the process. Chiron is incredibly ungrateful, claiming that the wolf about to chew his balls off was right where he wanted it. And then we get another version of King Lyconian ruminating his loss. As he flees, Jason tries to stop him, only to be bitten as a response. This turns his hand into a strobe light, kinda. And then we get the following scenes. Jason, you damn fool. You've been imprinted. Chiron, hold his arm down. I have to remove it. Theseus, next time you want to try to be a man, come and see me first. Bring him to me. I only have so much power left. Who are you? Well, I guess that's more Theseus talking. Another thing, everyone always talks off screen on this, so you almost never have an idea on who's saying what, since the characters are so poorly established. What happened to you? You're part machine, like Chiron. I am Hera, goddess of Olympus. I can tell you what happened. Her time is over. The gods who enslaved and killed will soon be no more, just bolts and pieces like me. I can't wait until Olympus falls. Chiron, you can't say that. We must bow. He can say that because it is true. You don't know how many revisions and modifications I've been through just to live. Enough talk. Jason, I can heal you, but the imprint will be on you until you kill the Wolf King. You will always be a target. A scent forever on you. The best thing I ever did was save you, Jason. All of this should be yours. The first trial will be to kill King Lyconian. Eventually, defeat the dragon and retrieve the fleece. Find warriors that will follow you forever. Now, one last time. May all see my true form and let me heal your hand. My hand? Now you have bolts and pieces, just like Chiron and I. So, this particular section is like a perfect example on why making this comic with AI art was such a terrible, 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 terrible idea. Obviously, I've been commenting on this throughout the entire review, and I will continue to comment on it, but this is honestly one of the best examples in this book. First, Jason has just been bitten by King Lyconian and imprinted. Unlike Twilight, this doesn't mean King Lyconian suddenly has uncontrollable lust towards Jason, although that might have made the story better. This just means that Jason is forever marked with a sin that lets King Lyconian track him. Although then later on it changes to that Jason is going to turn into a wolf at the next full moon. But again, the story is riddled with plot holes. But since we're using AI art, instead of showing us a bite, we see Jason's hand aglow like he just stuck it in pitch and lit it on fire. And then Garrison arrived. Garrison literally uses AI generator concept art for her and does a terrible job for cropping out all of the concept art. Like, dude, you know how easy this is? But let's take a moment and look at some of the concept art that is left in, because it's just as funny as the rest of the art used in this book. Now, the main art of Hera is boring after all. We've seen it a dozen times as the author keeps copy and pasting it. First of all, look at one of these two concept arts here. The two pictures are just the same thing in different sizes. This one looks like Hera decided to take inspiration from Griffith for a moment, and my personal favorite, fish-faced Hera up here. She has no eyes, but with lips like those, who needs eyes? But, here's another issue with this art. When we see Hera, we're supposed to look at her and see a woman who's made several modifications on her body in order to live. She's supposed to be more machine than person. After all, the Olympians aren't really gods, just men with more advanced technology, but also somehow being born of angels and demons. However, since Garrison is just copy-pasting different cuts of the same concept art, there's nothing in the art to imply this, apart from the words being spoken. All versions of Hera we see in this comic book, even when she turns into Jean Grey and blows herself up to be extra dramatic because somehow performing a patch job on Jason's hand uses the last of her power, which means boom, I guess. None of these versions are all that cybernetic. It reminds me a lot of the first Mass Effect game. See, in that game, Saren was originally supposed to change appearance throughout the game. Over the course of the game, you would see him make more and more enhancements to himself as you keep foiling his plots. So that when you finally meet him in the final battle, he comments about how Sovereign improved him during his last fight. You were supposed to be able to see how much he had changed, how much he allowed the Reaper to influence him. However, the developers weren't able to include that. So when he says this, we just see the same Saren we've always seen throughout the game. This lessened the effect of that moment incredibly. However, Mass Effect has an excuse. It's a massive game that was worked on by a company that was running out of time and money. This is a comic book made out of AI art, which means the author probably paid $30. Anyways, back to the story at hand. After Hera goes pop, Theseus and Jason decide to set up to find some help to fend off the Wolf King's next attack. We get some hints at a strange relationship between Theseus and Chiron, but it's never relevant again and it's never explained, so go ahead and just forget that. It's not needed anymore. Ball it up and throw it in the trash. Chiron tells them to seek out the prison at the sea, which is... Put a pin in that. It's going to be important, but just put a pin on that later. They seek out Argus, who constructed the Argo, which despite the AI art is not supposed to be finished yet, so go ahead and ignore that it looks perfectly saleable. For some reason, people are also trying to destroy the soon-to-be Argo, but don't know why. Argus says it's because they're scared of it, but it's a fucking ship, and they're in a port town. Why are they scared of the Argo? However, despite this being called the Argonauts and being based on the famous Argonautica myth, they decide not to take the Argo out and just go ahead and keep going on foot. Now with Argus's half-harpy friend in tow. They randomly come across Polyphemus in a random desert battlefield. How they got to that from the sea is never answered, and Polyphemus says, "Hey, I know exactly who you're looking for and where you're going. Also, I killed all the centaurs and went to fight Hercules, who I know you're searching for, so I'm coming along." But eventually, they arrive at the prison at the sea. Now, I want you... This is just honestly great. Are you ready? Are you ready to see the amazing art that we get for the place creatively named Prison at the Sea? Oh, I'm not sure you are, but ladies and gentlemen, all those variations thereupon, please behold the Prison at the Sea.
There's no water.
Seriously, did Buddy Garrison write the script first and then generate the images and then absolutely nothing to edit in between? He didn't change the script. He didn't try to find fitting images. This is why I say this book feels like it was written by an AI as well, because, oh my god, how do you mess up a concept as simple as a prison at sea? Just add some fucking water. How hard could that be? You don't have to take the first result you generated in Midjourney AI. Just make a new image. Add some additional prompts. Just narrow it down until you get something fitting. Like maybe a fucking prison surrounded by fucking water. Anyways, the important part about this is they lead a prison revolt, break Hercules and all the other prisoners out, and then recruit them to defend the village from King Lycaonian. At this time, you'll notice that when the book says it's inspired by the myth of Jason and the Argonauts, you realize that's a fat load of crap. This book is more accurately a remake of the Jason and the Argonauts movie released in 1963, as mentioned in the front cover. So anyone expecting a mythologically accurate characters is going to be disappointed. For one, I can easily tell you that Hera was not a friendly person in Greek mythology. In fact, she was often just as petty and vindictive as Zeus was, just with a lot less of a proclivity to go sleep around. Remember, this is the same goddess who punted one of her kids off of Mount Olympus because he was born ugly. Even in the 1963 film, Hera mostly helped Jason out because King Pelias slayed a woman in Hera's temple, basically pissing her off. If the author wanted to use an Olympian who was kind and compassionate for the sake of being kind and compassionate, he would have fared much better using someone like Hestia, the goddess of the hearth. But secondly, even despite the fact that it's clearly inspired by the 1963 movie above all else, we really don't see any meaningful allusions to the source material that Garrison is drawing from. Why not have Hera assist Jason 5 times before she decides to go pop? Why is he using King Lycaonian as Jason's mortal enemy instead of King Pelias? It's not like he can unring a bell since he's already stated the dragon destroyed the Golden City, not King Pelias. So he's clearly gonna, if this goes anywhere, the dragon is clearly gonna be an allusion to the Hydra. It feels like Garrison just typed in the prompt, rewrite Jason and the Argonauts in a post-apocalyptic future, and took whatever was spit out at him with no quality control whatsoever. But let's go ahead and wrap this up quickly. Much like the graphic novel who suddenly decided that it's tired of telling its story. After convincing the prisoners to come with him, Jason hurries back to his town. Not before he randomly stumbles across Ancaeus, the last surviving warrior of a village just wiped out by the wolves. So, the wolves can attack before the full moon, but for some reason they're waiting for the full moon to attack Jason again. But then wouldn't that also go against the fact that they only apparently attack on feeding day or feeding time? So, how does this work? Why am I trying to make sense of this crap? Anyways, this only happens so Ancaeus can join the now officially named Argonauts, who I might remind don't even have the Argo yet. But I mean, we can't tell a story without the ever-important Ancaeus, so let's stop the story dead in its track to force him into the group. Poor man was just trying to take a sip of his wine, and Jason came by and yoinked him into the group like you're ours now. Much like a D&D player who met a goblin named Boblin. In any case, after that diversion, they're just now back at the fishing village that Jason lives. Nothing else. They just teleport back. That's how easy it was. Jason gives a speech about how he's going to kill Lyconian as the start of his attempts to overthrow the gods, but... Wait. What? That doesn't make any sense. Why would Jason feel the need to overthrow the gods in the slightest? His home was destroyed by the dragon, and he was saved by Hera. So he literally has nothing but good experiences with the gods. Even the choice of, he doesn't see the damages of the gods. Everywhere he goes, it's more King Lyconian's fault, or the fault of people, not the gods. Even the choice of King Lyconian as the first major antagonist and the first step in overthrowing the gods makes no sense from the mythological point of view. King Lyconian in myth is someone who stood against the gods and didn't believe them to be all-powerful. He was cursed because he challenged the gods' authority and power. So how would defeating him get back at the gods at all? In fact, it actually makes even less sense if you consider the world where he's a werewolf, sometimes, and the gods aren't magical beings here, but a version of man with advanced technology. But we're also somehow born of angels and demons. So how is King Lyconian at all connected with the gods in this world? Again, Hera even stepped in and demolished his army last time he attacked. Also, I really love this picture of Jason here, where the author for some reason cut two pictures in half and then tried to splice them together to make them look like one. But, I mean, dude, the background on them are different. The two pictures are wearing different clothing. And you didn't cut it right at all because I think they were at different angles. You literally made his right arm freakishly long while making his left arm a stunted mutation. Is this guy supposed to be Jason or is he supposed to be a charger? Anyway, the wolves arrive and we get a bunch of disconnected images, told to imagine an epic fight scene between them, and then eventually Jason confronts King Lyconian in battle. We're winning! Keep fighting, Argonauts! We can smell you, Jason. You will never lose that imprint, Lobo says, since apparently he's helping the wolves fight. Oh yeah? Why doesn't your Wolf King come and face me? Turn around. Here I am, boy. Slice. No. You fool. You damn fool. No. They can't see me. Turn. Your imprint is off me. I don't care who you are or what your power was. It is gone. Die, dog. Die. Wait. Look. Our king. He is human. Changed right before our eyes. You liar. That you are no better than the gods. You get stabbed and you change back. Kill him! Eat him! No, you don't understand. I can explain. So, the fuck just happened in the scene? So, either Jason stabs King Lyconian, and that turns him back into a human for some reason, or he stabs himself, or cut off his hand, which, I don't know, I really don't know what the fuck happens in the scene. So, from what I can tell, at least basically, Jason stabs King Lyconian with a dagger, which turns into what looks like a short sword in the next page, and he's got like a freakishly long nail on top of that. But for some reason, that turns King Lyconian back into a human. Even though I'm pretty sure the second panel here in between the stabs is a cat, not a wolf. Somehow this removes the imprint from Jason as well. Although he might have just cut off bits of his finger, because that is like a 3-fingered hand there. But also for somehow this turning them back causes King Lyconian's entire army to turn on him, because they didn't know he wasn't a wolf. But why didn't they know he was a wolf? Why were they only following him because he was a wolf? What the hell does this line mean? You liar, you are no better than the gods. What? So he was only better than the gods because he was a wolf? Like, it's not like you were following him because he was preaching other things. He was literally leading you around and destroying and killing innocent people. So, what? What?
This makes no fucking sense. I mean, it's just bullshit. Fuck. Oh my.
So anyways, you know what? Maybe the rest of the passage, maybe the rest of the book will explain this all in a very concise and nice way. I can't even say that with a straight face. You all know what's coming. You all know it's going to be worse. But anyways, fine, I warn you. I had a curse. With my final breath, I release it. Eat him. Hang him. Lyconian's curse. Look, from the water, from the ground, everywhere. Skeletons. The undead. Jason, what do we do? Like my father taught me. We fight. No scheme or curse of man or dead dog will stop us. Prove Hera right. Fight for the gods we're trying to overthrow, apparently. Okay, so I don't get these last few pages at all. King Lyconian being a werewolf makes a bit of sense because that was his curse. In most versions of the myth, he's turned into a wolf as punishment for his crimes against Zeus. So how the story has been portraying him thus far, while questionably thematic and narratively stupid, at least made some sort of sense inspirationally. So where the fuck does King Lyconian being able to summon waves of undead from the sea because that's actually his curse come into the picture? Even in the original Jason and the Argonauts movie, the undead he fights are from the Hydra, after the teeth of the Hydra have been buried. In fact, I'm fairly sure even in the original myth, there's no sign of undead anywhere. So where the hell does this army of undead come from? Did Garrison just get some random AI images of skeletons coming out of the seas and think, oh shit, that's kind of cool, and then just, with the attention span of an ADHD writer, decide to randomly include them and rewrite the whole last part of the story? Again, this makes even less sense than Jason stabbing King Lyconian and somehow turning him back into a human. And what is with this line? For Hera, I thought we were showing the Olympian gods who was the real boss. You were going to overthrow them. Why are you fighting in their name now? In any case, the story ends like it's going to leave the fate of Jason and the Argonauts up to interpretation. Only, no, actually he did beat the skeletons. And it's time for the actual story that this is based on to start. So 1 out of 10.
No, God! No, God, please, no!
Look, I honestly never thought I'd actually have to give that rating out to anything I've read. But, like, can you blame me? Not only does the story make no sense whatsoever, but the author had the gall to use AI art to try and make a comic. As I said before, I don't mind the idea of AI art in a purely personal setting. I use it all the time for character portraits and campaigns I run. But I have to draw a firm line in the sand on trying to profit from it in any way. Furthermore, if you're going to commit to using an AI art, at least have the decency to not be lazy and make your art internally consistent with itself as much as you possibly can. I think I would have been less annoyed if he had copy and pasted the same picture over and over again for every character, because at least then it would have had some consistent vision of that character. Instead, it's like he takes whatever that prompt gives him and just throws it up. Hera goes from looking like some kind of tribal warrior to looking like Jean Grey exploding. Chiron is constantly shifting. Theseus is constantly shifting. And don't even get me started on Jason, our titular character. And again, because this is an AI art, you can't tweak the scenes to actually show what you're writing. Honestly, if Garrison was smart, he would have made the scenes first and then wrote the story. Or at least done an outline of the story, got what images he needed, and then put in the details. Instead, it feels more like he wrote the story, got tired of trying to draw himself, so he just used AI art. And then, since he was so sick of it, did absolutely nothing to maintain any form of internal consistency. The battle scenes are garbage because all they are is just random noise, and we're being told, imagine people are fighting in these scenes. Numerous times there's art errors, like the whole time when Jason's standing up to the camera, and it looks like he only has 3 fingers on one hand. Or, for some reason, when the author does put some effort, and he splices 2 completely different images together. But in the end, makes the art even worse. Which is, trust me, is a challenge when it comes to AI art. overall, this is one of those things that I really, really hope isn't something that's going to be common later on. I don't think AI should be used for any kind of artistic pursuit. If you're going to write a story, if you're going to draw a comic, you need to put in the time and effort or hire someone who has those skills when you can't to do this. You don't just plug in prompts and try to sell this. Not only because AI art steals from other creators to train itself, but because you get uninspired hack garbage like this. I honestly don't know what else to say. I guess that's all I really have to say with this. This is obviously, I don't even think this deserves Mount Doom. This deserves the deepest, darkest pits of Tartarus, to be tortured over and over again to teach a lesson to every other person in the world. Don't make AI art comics. With that being said, just remember, with every book comes an adventure. And you know what? Don't bother going on those adventures if the author themselves doesn't even care. See you later, everyone.